They claim every song has a tale, but one August night in Nashville, one tune spun a complete lie. Beneath a haze of golden spotlights, a 25-year-old country singer named Maggie Baugh shared the stage with Keith Urban, the man whose voice was synonymous with love, devotion, and one name, Nicole Kidman. Their duet should have been pure harmony. Two artists, one melody. Yet when Keith's smile lingered a touch too long and his lyrics suddenly shifted to, "I'll be your guitar player, Maggie," the world stopped cold. Cameras exploded, hashtags trended, and within hours, a firestorm ignited. The internet anointed her the other woman, the flame that torched a 19-year Hollywood fairy tale. Maggie uttered nothing, not a tweet, not a whisper. Silence became her shield. But in this digital age, quiet sounds a lot like guilt. For weeks, the gossip beast devoured her name, twisting love songs into indictments and glances into affairs. But somewhere beneath the chaos, a softer truth waited. Maybe this wasn't about scandal at all. Maybe it was about fame's cruel magic, turning hearts into headlines, and a song meant for joy into a weapon of heartbreak. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the singer who never wanted the glare, the marriage clinging to devotion, and the icon lost inside his own soundtrack. This isn't just a story about Keith Urban or Nicole Kidman. It's about the girl who stepped into their orbit, sang one song, and accidentally rewrote the finale of a love that seemed forever. Before anyone whispered her name beside Keith Urban's, Maggie Baugh was just a barefoot girl from Boca Raton, chasing sunsets and songs toward a horizon wider than her small-town dreams. Her world was simple: a second-hand violin, a worn-out guitar, and a voice quivering with fear and faith. She wasn't born famous. No producers lurked backstage. No powerful names opened doors. There was only her, a kid on makeshift fairground stages, singing of loves she hadn't lived and heartbreaks she'd only imagined. Her dad worked endless hours. Her mom balanced jobs to keep things afloat. Yet they never missed a single show. They sat on folding chairs under harsh lights, watching their daughter pour her soul into a microphone that dwarfed her small hands. Even then, she sang like someone, somewhere beyond that crowd and past the horizon, might finally hear her. The road is never kind to dreamers. While other girls were at the beach, Maggie was tuning guitars and uploading grainy videos to YouTube. While others studied for exams, she drove hours to open mics that paid in claps, not cash. "Maybe someday," she'd whisper, packing her gear at midnight, the stench of beer and neon clinging to her hair. There were moments surrender seemed simpler, when scouts just laughed, when local boys called her too ambitious. But every rejection carved something deeper, not bitterness, but a ravenous hunger to be heard. By 17, she'd already written dozens of songs, raw, aching, unpolished. She didn't just write of love. She wrote of wanting to matter, of chasing beauty even as it shattered you. At 19, she stuffed her life into a faded Honda Civic and drove to Nashville, the city of neon dreams and quiet despair. Her first nights were spent on a stranger's couch. Her days, waiting tables. Her nights, chasing gigs that paid in hope. But Nashville, for all its cruelty, listens to a pure voice, and Maggie's was. Her songs weren't refined. They were breathing. Her sound, half country, half confession, caught the ears of musicians who murmured her name in hazy bars. One night, an engineer at a charity concert took notice. "She sings like she's remembering a life she hasn't lived," he said. A door cracked open. Still, Maggie bore the scars of invisibility, haunted by the echo. Was she good enough? Would anyone care? But in every lyric lived a defiance swaddled in tenderness. She didn't sing for fame. She sang for survival. No scandal, no spotlight. Just the quiet, relentless beat of a girl who refused to let silence win. And that made her rise so stunning, not destiny, but sheer, unyielding grit. And then, the call finally came. A request to perform at a charity showcase, opening for a true country icon. Maggie Baugh didn't believe it. She thought it was a cruel prank. But when she walked backstage that night and saw Keith Urban, larger than life, every bit the legend she'd worshipped, something inside her shifted. This was it. All the sleepless nights, the brutal rejections, the desperate prayers whispered into motel ceilings, they had all led her here. She had no idea that this moment, this stage, this song, this man, would become both her dream's launch and her reputation's downfall. Because sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you begged for, just to see if you can survive actually getting it. When Maggie first stepped onto that Nashville stage, she wasn't the headliner. She was the girl hovering just outside the spotlight, white-knuckling her guitar, her heart hammering like a storm against her ribs. The air reeked of whiskey and soundcheck, that electric hum before a show where every dreamer dares to hope this is their moment. The crowd wasn't there for her. They were waiting for Keith Urban, the superstar who could turn silence into a roaring ovation. But when Maggie sang, something shifted. The chatter died. The very lights seemed to lean in. Her voice, clear, aching, raw, filled the room like a confession crashing into a prayer. She sang about longing, about chasing something you know could shatter you. And for one single heartbeat, Nashville forgot its own cynicism. Keith noticed. After the show, he found her backstage, hair damp, hands trembling, still clutching the pick she'd nearly fumbled mid-song. "That was brave," he said. "You sang like you meant every word." And she did. She always did. That was the beginning. Soon, calls came in. Invitations for small sets, then studio sessions. Keith saw in her a reflection of his younger self. Hungry, honest, unafraid to bleed on stage. Their chemistry wasn't rehearsed. It was pure instinct. Two artists, two lonely hearts, speaking the same ancient language, music. When they finally shared a stage again months later, it wasn't just a duet. It was an exchange of stories. His lined with years of fame and scars. Hers painted with wonder and fear. Oh, the audience felt it, all right. That invisible thread pulling them together. Fragile, but completely undeniable. "She's got it," a producer murmured off stage. "That spark you can't manufacture." For Maggie, this was the summit. Validation, belonging, a rightful place among the gods she'd once thought untouchable. But fame never knocks. It slithers in with the applause, seductive and temporary. And when it retreats, it always takes more than it gave. After that duet exploded online, doors flew open faster than she could even approach. Interviews, photo shoots, record deals. Everyone wanted a piece of the girl who'd captured the soul of Nashville. But every headline bearing her name came with his attached. At first, it seemed harmless. The rising star who stole the show. Keith Urban's new favorite duet partner. But the tone started to sour. The glances curdled into whispers, and the whispers hardened into outright accusations. Maggie shrugged it off. She was young, driven, maybe a little naive. She truly believed her work would drown out the gossip. But in this game, the noise always wins. Then came the night that shattered it all. Another city, another crowd, another shot to prove herself. Keith asked if she'd sing "The Fighter," the song he famously wrote for his wife, Nicole Kidman. It was meant to be symbolic, a passing of the torch, not of affection. But as the lights dipped and his voice entwined with hers, the atmosphere warped. There was a tenderness in his gaze that felt too intense, a caution in her smile that felt too deliberate. Then he changed the lyric, from baby to Maggie, and the world tilted. She didn't know it then, but that single altered word would chart the entire course of her future life. After the show, her phone blew up. The clip spread like an inferno. Millions of views, thousands of comments, a bottomless pit of wild theories. People weren't just hearing a song. They believed they were witnessing a confession. Maggie retreated from the headlines, telling herself it would blow over, that the world would move on. But this time, it didn't. For Keith, it was merely another turbulent chapter in a life already full of storms. For Maggie, it was the moment her fairy tale went up in flames. She had finally found her voice, only to completely lose control of her story. And still, a part of her couldn't help but wonder, was that moment even an accident? Or did fate, with its vicious sense of humor, decide to test how much truth a single heart can withstand under the weight of one song? Let's be real. In Nashville, legends are built on stages, but they're obliterated online. And fame didn't arrive at Maggie's door. It kicked it down. Within a single day of that performance, her name was plastered everywhere. Maggie Baugh, the 25-year-old rising star who had stumbled into a love story that wasn't hers. Clips swamped TikTok, headlines screamed betrayal, and gossip shows picked apart every lyric, every smile, every split second of eye contact with Keith Urban. She'd spent her entire life begging to be heard, and now the world wouldn't shut up, just not about her music. At first, she lied to herself. "It's just noise," she whispered. "It'll fade. They'll forget." But fame has a twisted sense of humor. It doesn't fade. It feasts. Justice for Nicole trended for days. Keith and Maggie trended longer. Fan pages posted frame-by-frame proof of their secret chemistry. Paparazzi set up camp outside her apartment. Old performance videos were dug up with captions like, "The girl who stole Keith Urban's heart." Her Spotify streams doubled. Her followers tripled. But every new fan carried a hint of suspicion. Every victory was tainted by the stench of scandal. She stopped going out at night. She stopped taking calls. Even music, her sacred escape, started to feel like a punishment. Meanwhile, Keith's world was falling apart. His 19-year marriage to Nicole Kidman, the Hollywood queen who once saved him from his own demons, was ending. The tabloids didn't need facts. They'd already chosen their villain. The narrative was just too perfect. A golden couple shattered by a beautiful newcomer. A young muse usurping an aging goddess. One lyric changed, one marriage gone. Maggie read the headlines until her eyes glazed over. Homewrecker, heartbreaker, the new woman behind Keith Urban's fall. None of it was real, but in this game, truth is irrelevant. Only the version that sells. Somewhere in California. But Nicole Kidman, she stayed silent. And that silence, louder than any scream, buried Maggie Baugh alive. That duet, once a dream, now haunted her like a curse. "I'll be your guitar player, Maggie." The name echoed everywhere, across screens, continents, and broken hearts. Nobody heard a song anymore. All they heard was guilt. Inside the chaos, Maggie scrambled to hold on to the pieces of herself that fame hadn't already stolen. She called her parents, her childhood friends, anyone who still knew her as more than a scandalous headline. They told her to be strong, that time would wash it all away. But time doesn't heal a wound the world keeps ripping open. For a while, Keith Urban tried to shield her. Private messages, quiet reassurances. "Ignore the noise," he said, "just keep singing." But even he was drowning in divorce papers, public judgment, and his own brutal history with addiction and regret. The world that once adored him now questioned his every lyric, every smile. Nicole was the victim, Maggie the temptress, and Keith the man who lost them both. The truth? All three were just human. But fame doesn't deal in humanity. It deals in spectacle. The night the news officially broke, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, separate after 19 years. Maggie turned off her phone and sat in absolute silence. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The tears were gone. The lights of Nashville glowed outside her window. The same lights that once felt like stars now looked like fire. Somewhere she remembered her younger self. The barefoot girl on fairground stages who believed music could heal anything. That girl wouldn't even recognize the woman staring back now. Fragile, famous, and forever misunderstood. Fame had given her everything she'd ever dreamed of, and in return, it had taken everything she was. But even in that quiet despair, something in her refused to shatter. Because Maggie knew a day would come when silence could no longer protect her. She would have to speak. And when she did, the truth might not save her, but it would finally set her free. Because in the end, fame isn't about the applause. It's about what remains when the applause has faded. For 19 years, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were Hollywood's rarest illusion. A love story that seemed immune to fame's poison. They were proof that two different worlds, one of red carpets, one of dusty guitars, could coexist in perfect harmony. But love, even the most radiant kind, eventually bends under reality's weight. Behind the perfect photos and anniversary tributes, cracks had already formed. Insiders whispered of long absences, quiet resentment, an emotional distance that no Grammy or Oscar could ever hope to bridge. Nicole Kidman, forever the perfectionist, craved peace and stability. Keith Urban, forever restless, still chased the beautiful chaos that first made him a star. By the time Maggie Baugh entered their orbit, the foundation was already shaking. She didn't cause the earthquake. She was just standing on the fault line when it finally gave way. When the divorce was official, the world gasped, not from surprise, but from the heartbreak of a shattered illusion. 19 years of love and survival, erased by a single line of legal text. Nicole withdrew into her silence. Keith vanished into his tours, And Maggie, she simply disappeared, crushed beneath a story she never asked to tell. The tabloids devoured her like wolves. Her social media became a war zone. Strangers called her a homewrecker, a fame chaser, a liar. She stopped reading the comments after one message simply read, "You ruined her life." What they didn't know was that her own life was fraying too. Her record label froze her upcoming release, scared of the bad press. Endorsement deals evaporated. Even industry friends went quiet. No one wanted to be seen with the girl the internet had chosen to hate. And yet, within the wreckage, was a quiet heartbreak nobody reported. Keith had always been open about his battles, with addiction, with loneliness, with himself. Nicole had once pulled him from that abyss, dragging him from the bottle back into the light. But now, without her, the darkness crept back, subtle but familiar. The kind that doesn't roar, it whispers. Those close to him said he still played the old songs, the ones he'd written for her. But the lyrics sounded different now, like echoes of a life he could never reclaim. And when he sang "The Fighter," the crowd still cheered, but he wouldn't meet a single eye. Maggie heard about those performances from the same headlines that tormented her. Sometimes she'd scroll in the dark, reading about the man who once believed in her voice, and wonder if he blamed her too. She wanted to reach out, to explain, to whisper, "I never meant for any of this." But what could she say that wouldn't sound like a confession? In the cruel theater of fame, no one plays themselves. They only play the roles the public writes for them. The roles were cast. Nicole, the betrayed wife, Keith, the fallen hero, and Maggie, the villain. But the truth was far simpler, and infinitely sadder. They were just people who loved deeply and lost loudly. For Nicole, the tragedy was repetition. Another marriage unraveled by fame's invisible hand. For Keith, it was a relapse into the old loneliness. For Maggie, it was the brutal realization that dreams, when they come true too fast, can curdle into nightmares. She once told a friend, "I thought music would set me free. I never thought it could cage me." And in that one quiet sentence lies the hidden truth behind every star's downfall. The very light that lifts you can also reduce you to ashes. By year's end, the world had moved on to newer scandals and fresher gossip. But the three of them, Keith, Nicole, Maggie, carried the silence like a scar. Because fame forgets, but people remember. And in every whispered rumor, every late-night replay of that fateful duet, lingered the faint, persistent ache of what was once love, and what it became when the lights refused to dim. Weeks became months. The world's obsession cooled, but the silence it left behind was heavier than any noise. For the first time since her name became a headline, Maggie Baugh decided to speak. It wasn't a press conference or a PR stunt. It was a quiet interview, filmed in soft light, where the only thing louder than her voice was her sheer exhaustion. Her hands were folded. Her smile was small. Her eyes were tired. "I never wanted to be part of anyone's breakup," she began, the words trembling not with guilt, but with fatigue. "Keith was someone I admired, not someone I wanted to hurt." No anger, no excuses, just honesty wrapped in ache. She spoke about how the collaboration began, how music was the bridge between two artists, not the spark of a scandal. "We were just making music," she said softly. "People saw what they wanted to see." Her team had begged her to stay silent. They warned that every word could reignite the firestorm. But she couldn't remain quiet any longer. Silence had already stolen her narrative once. She would not let it steal it again. When the interviewer asked about that night in Nashville, Maggie Baugh paused. The air grew heavy. Then she explained that the lyric change wasn't meant to harm a soul. It wasn't even planned. The internet picked apart every syllable. Some believed her. Others called it a calculated move. But for anyone truly listening, there was something undeniably human in her voice. The sound of a young woman forced to grow up far too fast. She didn't blame Keith Urban. She didn't accuse him either. "He's an incredible artist," she said. "And he's also human, just like the rest of us." Then came her final words, the ones that finally hushed her most vicious critics. "I wish Nicole and Keith nothing but healing. This whole thing, it's been painful for everyone." And for a moment, one brief, sacred moment, the internet stopped shouting. Because behind the noise, behind the hashtags, there was finally something real. Empathy. In Nashville, the story began to recede. Maggie returned to her small apartment and started writing again. Not songs for the charts, but songs for herself. The kind born from surviving something you never asked for. She played smaller venues now, with fewer cameras, fewer questions, and far more peace. Those who saw her perform said she sang differently, gentler, wiser, as if she'd learned the hard way what truth costs in a world that sells it for clicks. Meanwhile, Nicole Kidman re-emerged, not as the wounded wife, but as a woman who had mastered the art of silence. She didn't break. She transcended. Her work flourished. Her grace became its own legend. And Keith? He went back to the road, performing, smiling, pretending. But there was something missing behind the charm. A hollow space only he and his guitar could understand. 3 lives, once bound by a single song, now moved to different rhythms. Quieter, slower, wiser. The tabloids had long since moved on, but if you truly listened, you could still hear the echo. Because what happened between Maggie, Keith, and Nicole wasn't really about scandal. It was about how fame devours the innocent, and how truth, no matter how quiet, always finds its way through the wreckage. At one of her later concerts, Maggie Baugh sang a new song that night, a soft ballad that never spoke a name, yet somehow told the entire story. They called it love, they called it sin, but none of them were there within. We sang a song, the crowd went wild, and lost our souls to the spotlight's child. When the final note hung in the air, the crowd didn't erupt. They stood in utter silence. No applause, just the heavy shared weight of understanding. And maybe, finally, that was enough. Because the real hidden truth wasn't about who was right or wrong. It was about 3 people who tried to love, to heal, to simply live. Under a glare so intense, no heart emerges unburned. When the stage lights dim and the last echo fades, all that's left is the quiet. And in that quiet, the truth can finally breathe. Nicole Kidman, a woman once defined by grace, chose peace over revenge. She walked away without bitterness, her dignity untouched, her gaze holding a quiet understanding. She showed the world that true strength isn't always in the fight. Sometimes it's in the graceful release. Keith Urban, the man who once forged his pain into poetry, still stands beneath those lights. Older now, quieter. His smile holds the ghost of every lyric that ever saved him. His songs sound different these days, stripped of the glamour, touched by a new repentance. Perhaps he finally understands that not every melody can mend what fame has shattered. And Maggie Baugh, the girl who never asked to be written into their narrative, learned the most brutal lesson. Dreams have a price, and innocence is always the first thing sold. Yet she did not disappear. She endured. Her voice, once drowned out by scandal, now rises again, softer, stronger, undeniably real. Because this was never just a tale of betrayal or fame. It was about 3 souls caught in the crossfire of love and perception. And how, after all the wreckage, they somehow held on to their humanity. Fame fades, rumors die, but the truth, once sung from the heart, never truly disappears. If this story meant something to you, remember this. Behind every shocking headline, there's a human heart, still beating, still learning how to heal.